I always believed my mother had my best interests at heart. She was the kind of woman who spoke softly, smiled often, and reminded everyone how much she had sacrificed for her children. Growing up, I trusted her completely, the way a child naturally trusts the person who raised them. So when she called me one afternoon and asked me to come over because she had something important to discuss, I didn't think twice. Her voice sounded calm, almost gentle, and she told me she just wanted us to talk like we're used to. I had no idea that this simple request would change how I saw her forever. My life before that day was pretty ordinary. I was 32, working full-time, trying to build a stable future for myself. I wasn't married, but I had my own small apartment, my own routine, and a sense of independence I was proud of. My younger brother, Aaron, still lived close to our mom, and he helped her with errands and appointments. I visited when I could, usually on weekends, bringing groceries or just sitting with her to talk about family memories. She often reminded me how much she appreciated my visits, how she missed the days when we were all under one roof. There was nothing in her tone that suggested anything was wrong. That afternoon, when I walked into her living room, everything felt familiar. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in soft sunlight. The old family photos still lined the shelves, frozen moments of birthdays, holidays, and smiles that felt like they belonged to another lifetime. My mom offered me tea and sat across from me on the couch. She folded her hands in her lap and looked at me with that serious expression she used when she wanted to sound wise. "I need you to trust me," she said quietly. "This is for the good of the family." Her words caught my attention, but I didn't feel alarmed. In my mind, for the good of the family had always meant unity, protection, and fairness. She reached into a folder on the coffee table and pulled out a few papers. "These are just some documents, nothing you need to worry about. I just want you to know everything is handled." She slid them slightly toward me, not fully, but enough for me to see there was more than one page. I smiled, the way I always did when she spoke in that reassuring tone. I wanted her to feel supported, to know I trusted her judgment. Still, something inside me felt curious. I leaned forward and gently asked, "What kind of documents?" She hesitated for a second before replying, "Just legal things, planning for the future." Her eyes didn't quite meet mine, but I brushed that off as nervousness. She asked me again, almost more firmly this time, "You trust me, right?" I nodded without thinking. After all, she was my mother. She had raised me, protected me, and guided me through life. Why wouldn't I trust her? That's when she pushed the folder fully toward me. "You can look if you want, but there's nothing to worry about." As I opened the folder, I expected to see something simple, maybe information about her house or some kind of medical paperwork. Instead, I saw official-looking pages filled with legal language. My eyes scanned the text slowly, trying to understand what I was reading. It took a few moments for it to sink in, but when it did, my chest tightened. These weren't just documents, they were related to her will, her estate, and how everything would be divided. I kept reading, my heart beating a little faster with each line. Names were listed, percentages were mentioned, instructions were clearly written, and then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My name wasn't there, not once. I flipped to the next page, thinking maybe I had missed it, but the result was the same. My brother's name appeared more than once, but mine was completely absent. I didn't say anything. I didn't look up. I didn't react. I just kept reading, pretending to focus on the words like everything was normal. My mother watched me carefully, her eyes searching my face for a reaction. But I smiled. I smiled the same way I always did. The same polite, calm smile that said, "Everything is fine." Inside, though, my thoughts were racing. Why wasn't my name there? Had she made a mistake, or was this intentional? I remembered all the times she had told me that both her children were equally important to her. I remembered how she used to say that everything she did was for both of us. None of that matched what I was seeing on those pages. I gently closed the folder and placed it back on the table. "Looks good," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. My mom relaxed a little, clearly relieved. "I'm glad you understand," she replied. "I just want everything to be simple when the time comes." She reached out and touched my hand, as if sealing our little moment of trust. We talked about other things after that. The weather, my job, my brother's schedule. She acted like nothing unusual had happened, and I followed her lead. When it was time to leave, she hugged me tightly and reminded me how much she loved me. I hugged her back, still smiling, still pretending everything was fine. But the moment I stepped outside, the smile faded. My mind replayed the scene over and over again. The folder, the missing name, her calm voice asking for my trust. I couldn't understand why she would leave me out like that, especially without explaining it to me. I had always been there for her, even when life got busy. I had never turned my back on my family. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My thoughts kept circling the same question. Why would my own mother quietly erase me like that? I didn't feel angry yet. Mostly, I felt confused. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that there was more to the story than I had seen. I decided not to confront her right away. If she wanted me to trust her, I would, at least on the surface. But I also knew I needed to understand the truth behind those papers, because whatever my mother was hiding, it had already started to change everything. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal. I called my mom, asked how she was feeling, and even joked with her like nothing had happened. On the outside, I was calm and supportive, but on the inside, I felt like I was carrying a heavy secret. The image of those documents kept flashing in my mind, especially the part where my name should have been. I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had been taken from me without my knowledge. I also started paying closer attention to my brother, Aaron. He had always been closer to our mom, more involved in her daily life. I used to see that as a good thing, something that kept our family connected. But now, every conversation with him felt different. When I mentioned our mom's health or future plans, he would respond vaguely, changing the subject or giving short answers. It felt like he knew more than he was letting on. One evening, I visited my mom again under the excuse of dropping off some groceries. She welcomed me with the same warm smile and offered me tea, just like before. We sat in the kitchen this time, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence between us. I wanted to ask her directly about the documents, about why my name was missing, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, I listened as she talked about how important it was to keep the family united. At one point, she said, "You know, not everyone handles responsibility the same way." She didn't look at me when she said it, but I felt the weight of her words. Was she talking about me? Did she think I wasn't responsible enough? I stayed quiet, nodding along, pretending not to notice the subtle shift in her tone. Later that night, I decided to look into things on my own. I searched through old family emails, messages, and even paperwork I had saved over the years. I wanted to understand what had led to this decision. That's when I found something that made my heart sink even further. There were messages between my mom and my brother discussing future arrangements and keeping things simple. My name was mentioned, but not in the way I expected. It was more like an afterthought, as if I wasn't a central part of the plan. I felt a deep sense of betrayal. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about being excluded, about feeling invisible in my own family. My mom hadn't even given me the respect of an explanation. She had simply asked for my trust and expected me to accept whatever she decided. The emotional weight of it all started to catch up to me. I would sit alone in my apartment, staring at my phone, wondering if I should confront them or keep pretending. Part of me wanted to call my mom and demand answers. Another part of me was scared of what I might hear. One afternoon, I finally reached a breaking point. I called Aaron and asked him directly, "Do you know why my name isn't in Mom's will?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I don't think it's my place to talk about that," he said carefully. His tone confirmed what I already suspected. He knew, and he wasn't going to tell me. That night, I cried for the first time since everything began. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, with tears that felt heavy and slow. I wasn't just hurt. I felt erased. All those years of being a good daughter, of showing up when it mattered, suddenly felt like they meant nothing. But somewhere in the middle of that pain, something inside me shifted. I realized that staying silent didn't mean staying powerless. My mom had asked for my trust, but she had never asked for my consent. And my brother had chosen to benefit from her decisions without questioning them. So I started to plan, not in a dramatic or aggressive way, but carefully, thoughtfully. I began gathering information, understanding my legal rights, and learning what options I had. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for clarity and maybe a little justice. I continued visiting my mom, smiling, listening, pretending everything was normal. But this time, my silence had a purpose. I was no longer just a confused daughter. I was someone who wanted answers, and I was determined to get them on my own terms. The real confrontation hadn't happened yet, but I knew it was coming. A few weeks later, I finally felt ready to face the truth. I asked my mom if we could talk privately, just the two of us. She agreed, her voice calm as ever. We sat in the same living room where everything had started, the same family photos watching us from the shelves. I took a deep breath and said, "I saw the documents." Her expression changed slightly, but she didn't interrupt me. "My name isn't there," I continued. "I just want to understand why." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed and looked down at her hands. "I thought this would be easier if you didn't know," she admitted. "Aaron needs more support. He's closer, more involved. I believed this was the best choice." Her words didn't feel comforting. They felt distant. "So I don't?" I asked quietly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and firmness. "It's not about love," she said. "It's about practicality." That was when I realized the truth. My mother hadn't made a mistake. She had made a decision, a deliberate one, and she expected me to accept it without question. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply nodded. "Thank you for being honest," I said, standing up. She seemed relieved, thinking the conversation was over. But for me, it was just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my own life. I worked harder, saved more, and built a future that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. I also limited my visits, creating emotional space where there used to be closeness. My mom noticed the distance, but she never asked about it. I learned an important lesson through all of this. Trust doesn't mean silence, and family doesn't always mean fairness. Sometimes the people who ask you to trust them the most are the ones who owe you the biggest explanations. When I think back to the day my mom asked me to trust her, I still remember the smile I gave her. But now I understand what that smile really was. It wasn't agreement. It was the moment I chose to see the truth for myself. And that truth, as painful as it was, gave me something even more powerful than any inheritance ever could. It gave me clarity, independence, and the strength to move forward without looking back.